Welcome to the Jagged Mood Podcast. My name is Dr. Paul Hamilton, and I'm here with Professor Hunter Reeve, and we are going to be discussing today the supernatural. So, what do we mean by the supernatural? By the supernatural, we mean those aspects of conscious experience that are not classified or defined by science, that really tend to go beyond. We might can think about the visionary experiences people have with visionary dreams, with experiencing spirits, or having other types of transcendent experiences. Sometimes when people fall in love, they feel that they're connected to something that is beyond. Sometimes people have memories of childhood that make them think of something that, or where they felt that they had access to something that was really beyond everyday experiences, or tinged with something that was really beyond these senses. And we're going to be asking, how do we make sense of that experience and try to understand it? What kind of value and sense do we assign to these kinds of experiences? So that's what our discussion is going to be today. Hunter, what are your opening thoughts on this topic?
I think that the supernatural, or I might say going beyond, is vital to the human psyche because it gives another dimension to our lives. And I believe that this is seen in dreams, in poetry, in music, in the arts,
Mhm.
sometimes even in science that go beyond. So I am really happy that we're discussing this. And
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I think that there's evidence in, sorry, were you going to say something else?
no, that's fine.
So, I mean, since our podcast is mostly about literature, but also about life, I think that there's great evidence for these kinds of experiences in literature, and in some of the great, most inspiring literature that's ever been written. I think that in terms of the first level of this kind of visionary experience, which is, I'll define as just a sense of something kind of tingling, or that is kind of there on the edges of consciousness, that people have, of a deeper significance to life. Wordsworth, I think, is one of the great poets and chroniclers of this. He writes in Tinturn Abbey of a sense sublime, of something far more deeply interfused, whose dwelling is the light of setting suns, and the round ocean, and the living air, and the blue sky, and in the mind of man, a motion and a spirit that impels all thinking things, all objects of all thought, and rolls through all things. A sense sublime, something far more deeply interfused. I think that really captures something intangible, that is just shimmering there on the edge of consciousness, ready to be imbued with this absolute significance. I can't help also, although this is not a theological podcast, but in the literary spirit of thinking of Paul's line quoted from the King James version of the Bible. Now we see through a glass darkly, but then we will see face to face. This idea that you're seeing through this medium that is somehow obscured, but you have this kind of longing for union, for something that is utterly beyond, that we just don't have a language yet to define.
Yes, I think that's very important, Paul. And I have a poem that articulates some of what you were speaking of
Mhm.
earlier,
Mhm.
and so I'll recite it
Yeah, I'd love to hear it. Thank you.
and then speak about it.
Yeah.
The knife of love sharpened itself on my heart. I traveled in a narrow red valley of lightly shining trees. Relief found me, and I knew we would meet again. Though we were so far apart, it was chancy. Angels sang in body of a cat who longed for consuming affection. A bright blue light appeared by my side, proving my spirit. I hope our meeting is soon. They say I'm old. The knife of love sharpened itself on my heart.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's really beautiful.
Thank you.
And I think that it'd be interested to hear what your thoughts are. I would just say my first impression is that it captures this longing, that we're talking about for um, something else that is on the other side of experience, the longing, the red.
Yes, go ahead. Yes.
I mean
The
that
red.
which the knife of love sharpened itself on my heart. Yeah,
Thank you.
it's kind of
Uh,
yeah. Did you have more to say?
yes. Uh, this was partly a dream that I had, but partly experience. And I'm longing to see a certain individual, and I don't know whether it's possible. That's the literal interpretation.
Yeah, yeah.
But Angel sang in body of a cat who longed for consuming affection is actually a dream, a waking dream that I had
Mm,
of an angel and a cat together.
mm,
And cats are infamous. We see them in Egyptian art, in Egyptian life, and many different cultures.
yeah, good point. Yeah.
And a
Mm,
bright blue light appearing by my side, proving my spirit. There was this is an actual experience where I'm sitting on my couch and a bright blue light appears.
mm,
And this is, and it also, I didn't go into detail, but it had kind of ancient figures on it.
mm,
And I didn't understand the language, but it was very lovely markings. And
yeah.
then the last part is realizing people saying I'm old and not feeling so old, but realizing in years I'm old. And then the longing for love and
Mm,
the bifurcation of that, of perhaps not finding it, but really striving for it.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that was it reminded me of that, the full of images of longing and also of union.
Yes, the longing for connection.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And the connection not only on the earth side, but on a spiritual, above and beyond side.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I think so.
But what are you had some excellent thoughts that you were going to speak about the supernatural
Yeah,
too.
well, I mean, I think that, this connects to the point that I was going to make about um, many people feeling that in their childhood they touched something supernatural, and I think that a lot of people, some people have these visionary experiences, as I know you have, um, into adulthood, or indeed for their entire lives. But some people also have these experiences, I think, just kind of when they're children. And um, Wordsworth also, in his ode Intimations of Immortality, writes about this, um, and associates this with childhood, this sense of a connection to a spiritual reality, or a level of reality that is um, beyond the everyday reality. He writes, "There was a time when meadow, grove, and stream, the earth and every common sight, to me did seem apparelled in celestial light, the glory and the freshness of a dream." Apparelled in celestial light. I think that the glory and the freshness of a dream, I think that is what he's talking about when he is talking about that fullness of a tangible spiritual presence. And then he goes on to lament that this is gone now. um, and but he speculates that, that um, maybe when we are born, maybe instead of learning and filling ourselves up with new things, maybe we are actually recollecting a former existence, or a former kind of life. And I think that some people have had that feeling that we're recollecting something um, that that has happened previously. He says, "Our birth is but a sleeping and a forgetting. The soul that rises with us, our life star, hath had elsewhere its setting, and cometh from afar. Not in entire forgetfulness, and not in utter nakedness, but trailing clouds of glory do we come." Um, this is an idea that goes back to Plato, the idea that somehow our souls are fully developed prior to our birth, um, and kind of preside over our life, and that as we grow, we seem to recollect more and more of that which we really are. Um, Not in entire forgetfulness, and not in utter nakedness, but trailing clouds of glory. The soul that rises with us, our life star, hath had elsewhere its setting. Our birth is but a sleep and a forgetting. That our life star, as he puts it, is somehow presiding over our life, and that we somehow, um, as children, have this experience, especially that there is that we still have somehow access, almost a feeling of direct access to this other reality that we've come from.
Yes, that's certainly true. Uh, uh, it's just so important to reach beyond and to. I'm so glad you're including Wordsworth and other poets.
Hmm.
And I remember Blake as a child screaming out the window that he was seeing God, and
Mhm.
that was a great childhood experience.
Yeah.
And other ones that you were speaking of.
Yeah, I mean, Blake's famous line is, "When the sun rises, do you not see a round disk of fire, somewhat like a guinea? And he responds, "Oh no, I see an innumerable company of the heavenly host crying, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord Almighty. I question not my corporeal eye any more than I would question a window concerning a sight. I look through it and not with it." So I think that his view is, quite unorthodox, but but also just quite directly visionary. And I think that what he means is that he feels that this level of vision is really the product of an integrated kind of spiritual insight, that he thinks that the real reality is the reality of the soul, and that what he calls corporeal reality is this reality that can be collected, a second order experience, the reality that can be collectively experienced as sort of like the lowest common denominator reality. And so he has this kind of distinct idea that there are these kinds of there is a privileged dimension of experience that is accessible to the individual. He writes elsewhere, "I give you the end of a golden string, only wind it into a ball. It will lead you in at heaven's gate, built in Jerusalem's wall." And you can hear that religious imagery. I mean, it's in many ways a similar themes to your poem, in that idea that there is this idea of longing and following a path towards absolute union, heaven's gate built in Jerusalem's wall. And so I think that, like I said, I mean, there's a long history of this kind of in a repository in literature of these kinds of experiences that people have, these heightened experiences. Also in the language of psychology, of course, William James wrote his famous book, Varieties of Religious Experience, where he charted, and other people have continued that work of charting visionary experiences from all around the world. People have these, and they describe a qualitatively different kind of value to these experiences than they do to, say, an ordinary dream, or somebody might say to a hallucination or something. These are lasting experiences that create a lasting impression on people. They have deep truths that are conveyed to the person, and people have difficulty describing them. There's an ineffability about them, but they want to describe them, but they have a kind of ineffability about them.
Yeah, that's very important to say, because I had a rather, I would say, a visit from an alien. And I say alien very positively. This was not a negative experience,
Mm.
visitation, but I was at the beach with one of my best friends and her two grandchildren, and we went to her son-in-law's house, and there was some negative energy there, and we all could feel it, and we were the only ones in the house. But I saw this young man who was dressed rather formally. I can't explain it exactly, but it was kind of uniform like. And he was like standing and smiling as if he was guarding us and protecting us. And I thought that my friend had seen him, but she told me later that she hadn't seen him. But
Mm.
she believed that I did. I mean, she
Right.
believed in me. And a lot of people would say, "Oh, no, that's not true." But it is true. It happened to me.
Yeah.
and I was not on drugs and perfectly sober.
Mhm.
So this was a very inspiring experience because I felt protected from
Yeah,
this energy, negative energy.
yeah, yeah. That's very powerful. Um, and I mean, I think that there's a that people who have these experiences, this is a different kind of uh, of course, people have hallucinations, and then they wake up in the hallucinations, and they can't remember what they were, or they um, etc. But I mean, I think that when people have uh, these kind of visionary experiences, what I'll call them, they ascribe a higher value to them. They seem to have long-lasting impact on people.
Yes, that's very true. And I go back, as you mentioned, I've seen visions and experienced people from another realm since I was a young child. And this is very evident in that I saw when I was sleeping with my older sister in a room when I was 4 or 5 years old, and I was very unhappy and reaching out, and these three women came and were kind of dancing above me and uh, reaching out for me, and it was like another wonderful blanket of protection. So
Mm,
this is something that has been in my life before this other experience that I was describing.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I remember that. I mean, I had this experience when I was uh, 19 or 20, I think, and my grandmother was was on her deathbed, and she was very sick, and I came to see her, and I remember that she had she the first thing that she asked me was, "Are you another angel?" And that response shocked me because it meant um, that she was perceiving many angels, and they were coming and going, and that she was in this kind of the everyday world, and the another reality were mingling in her mind. And that always made a big impression. I'm not sure what, I don't know what she was experiencing because I don't know, but it certainly made a big impression on me. And there was also quite a funny experience that I had. My stepmother was in contact with this woman who was a medium, and she was someone who a lot of people spoke with because she claimed to be able to communicate with the dead. And she herself had been on death's door for like 20 years on dialysis, and in a hospital room, and had clinically died herself several times. Um, and my stepmother asked her, if the dead were at peace. And her response was, "No, they're not at peace. They're very busy. They're very busy." And so, apparently, if she's to be trusted, apparently they're um, got a lot of work to do over there. So you don't get any break. You don't get any reprieve. Lots of busy work. Again, those are just anecdotes, but nonetheless, thought those were suggestive. Do you have any other thoughts on that topic, Hunter?
I, yes, I, I really think that I went to a psychic once, and he also said a very similar thing, and that the spirits, he called them spirits, were very occupied and were constantly moving around doing things. So this is uh, something that I've heard before, and I've heard it from other psychics that I haven't been to.
Yeah,
I've heard about them, so it must be very common knowledge to psychics.
yeah, yeah.
So, very interesting. And I think that I've talked to people who begin to reach out for something beyond, and who often become afraid of doing so, that they'll be looked upon as ridiculed, and that's too bad, because as you said, there isn't much of a common language beyond our consciousness, and I
Hmm.
think we need to welcome it.
Yeah, I mean, the Hamlet says, like a stranger, give it welcome when he's referring to the ghost. I think that there are, as Hamlet also says, that there's more on heaven and earth than philosophy, which at the time would have meant science, can account for. Um, I think a good um, a good figure to put this into a framework is Michael Meade, who is this Jungian philosopher. He writes, the prison of the modern mind is partly created by the common belief that reality can be limited to logic, statistics, and provable facts. Not that the literal world is unreal, rather that it is the first level of reality and can never depict all that is truly real. Too much hard reality in the world becomes as if flat again. We lose touch with all that makes this earth a place of wonder and beauty and hidden possibilities. I think that what I get from that is that there should be this openness. Let me call it a radical openness, and a sense that that our experience doesn't really know the difference between scientifically verifiable reality and just the wonder and depth of spiritual experience or visionary experience. We just get it all in an amalgamation. And of course, later on, we separate it out, and there's tremendous value in doing that separation. Don't get me wrong, especially because we don't want to be taken in by all of the hucksters who are out there ready to sell some kind of cheap interpretation of whatever our experience is, and in exchange get control over our lives and tell us what to do and all of that stuff, or sell us something. So I don't mean that there should not be any filtering, but I think that Dickinson, as always, has a wonderful point, that it is our experience finally that is sacrosanct. I mean, this is what we come from, our own consciousness is what we come from, and this is what we go back to. She writes, um, experience escorts us last. His pungent company will not allow an axiom and opportunity. Experience escorts us last. His pungent company will not allow an axiom and opportunity. And so, in her vision of this, as in her Because I Could Not Stop for Death poem. She's imagining experience as this kind of suitor who's escorting us and against our will, maybe, um, out of life. And science is no help at that point. It's direct experience or nothing, and so at last, this is absolutely sacrosanct. We don't know where our experience comes from. We don't know where it goes to. We can say that there's this substratum of a brain that we can point to, but ultimately, it is that is not the ultimate arbiter. It's what we experience. It's that first person subjective experience that is last, and our first person subjective experience has these aspects of it that are just not easily absorbed into the objective scientific experience. And again, like I think Blake would say that is because the objective shared uh, um, lowest common denominator experience is, or that the objective experience is that which can be shared communally and socially, is by necessity a lowest common denominator experience, and that the individual experience is has a higher degree of organization and and is not necessarily, not all aspects of that are amenable to a kind of communal or verifiable in the way that scientific rigor demands. And so I think that science is a great filter for quackery and charlatanism, and yet all of us, and yet our experience is ultimately sacrosanct, because it's everything else derives from our experience. There's no science without individual experience.
Exactly, and I think we're not trying to say that we're speaking of all supernatural. We're giving examples of our own, and examples mainly in literature and philosophy. So I wanted to make that clear. But
Looking at it from the point of view of literature and speculation about personal experience,
exactly.
with an open mind.
Because we can also see authors like Edgar Allan Poe going on to the supernatural. He gets into the macabre too, but he is. People say he was on drugs and all this, but you have to have something else going for you than just being on drugs. And he did have it, and it's curious about his everlasting stories of the supernatural. We don't we're not going to get into this extensively, but I wanted to mention him because he really strived to elaborate on the supernatural and the mystical.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And Edgar Allan Poe, and there's a lot of great
Yeah,
um, writers, artists, musicians who have explored these depths. I think that the one point that I would make is that these experiences are often ineffable, have an ineffable quality. I think that the tangible, there are aspects of them that are common, which is like that people tend to believe, as we said earlier, that these experiences have an authority to them that gives people a sense of deep significance that is often long lasting. I think if you actually look at the experiences themselves, the contents of the experience, they just run a huge gamut. It's like a mosaic. And I think that it's very difficult to derive any kind of pattern from these kinds of overarching experiences that people have from all sorts of different cultures and all sorts of different idioms. It's like this, like I said, it's like this mosaic that um, you've got angels here with what types of angels. If you're in a person in India, they might see the god Shiva or Vishnu or it seems as if there is this, that there is a commonality when it comes to the experience itself, like the quality of the experience itself, but it seems to have different faces, different aspects of it.
Yes, it's very true.
But it's like it reminds me of the way that it's like this subjective realm. For whatever reason, it just doesn't it doesn't apologize. It gives us things that don't make sense from a from the standpoint of uh, an explanatory kind of science, and it doesn't apologize for not making any sense. It just gives us this content and these experiences. And I mean, it reminds me of the way that quantum mechanics, the theory of the small, doesn't square with relativity. I mean, these are two they both have great explanatory power, up to the tiny, the 42nd decimal place or whatever, and yet they don't talk to each other. You wonder, I mean, like, if there is something just kind of fundamental about various aspects of experience that they don't square. We have to just kind of get used to that being the case.
Yes, it's certainly true.
Yeah.
And I've really enjoyed giving you people examples of the supernatural, of my visionary experiences, and I really got a lot out of listening to Paul and his experiences and
Yeah. Yeah.
his quotation from famous writers and philosophers.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, why don't we finish with this? I'd forgotten to mention that um, I think I've had experiences that I would call visionary, and they mostly occurred with dreams. So I had this dream at one point that I was at my grandmother's house, and there was a river that flowed directly through the front window into her living room, and there were dolphins and things that were coming out of the river, and it was a very powerful, very beautiful dream. But I also think that this is kind of symbolic of the way that these visionary experiences capture us. It is like a sense of continuity. It's like a highway where you thought that there was a wall. You thought that that you were in a confined area, and suddenly this river is just going straight through the living room, and showing you these other possibilities. And I think that is a great way to kind of imagine these kinds of visionary experiences.
Yes, I think it is, and reminds me again of the search and also the finding, as you did, of the incredible river running through the house. The striving for a larger connection
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
a larger communion. I think
Yeah.
that's vital to what we have brought up.
Yeah. Ralph Waldo Emerson has a great quote. He writes on this idea of larger connection, union. We know that all spiritual being is in us. A wise old proverb says, God comes to see us without bell. That is, as there is no screen or ceiling between our heads and the infinite heavens, so is there no bar or wall in the soul where we, the effect, cease and God, the cause, begins. The walls are taken away. We lie open on one side to the deeps of spiritual nature. Um, so I think that that idea of a continuity um, instead of a division is sort of what these spiritual experiences keep communicating, that where we thought that there was division, where we thought that there was isolation, or estrangement or alienation, actually, if we look more carefully, there is a continuity and there is no wall there. There's no division there where we thought there was.
Yes, that's certainly true. Uh, and I think that's a good place to end our this podcast, and we'll
Mhm.
probably speak of it again in other podcasts.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so it's been wonderful to engage in this survey with you of literature and supernatural, and look forward to our next podcast. And also, if our listeners would like to comment or like to start a conversation on any of these topics, it would be great to hear from you in the comment sections. Um, and we will see you again soon.